Voyons c'est des coins, mon yon. Another one. This is another one. Moi Italy, waji tu nawe. 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 We con yeswa oh. When you want yeswa hey. Jona yeswa oh. Deble yeswa hey. When you want yeswa hey. Jona yeswa oh. Deble yeswa hey. Lord, I give you praise. I worship you. I praise the name. You are the Lord. When my hope was broken, you gave me strength. When I had nowhere to turn, you blessed my life. When I had nowhere to go to, you gave me strength. I worship you, oh Yahweh. We con yeswa oh. When you want yeswa hey. Jona yeswa oh. Deble yeswa hey. We con yeswa oh. When you want yeswa hey. Jona yeswa oh. Deble yeswa hey. Sit for your tail, no puna will. Whoop on your tail, no puna deal. Sit for your tail, no puna will. Whoop on your tail, no puna deal. Devil, you are a liar. You are a spacer. Devil, you are a failure. You are a liar. I will make it today. I will make it tomorrow. Every battle I face, you will stand by me. We con yeswa oh. When you want yeswa hey. Jona yeswa.
Hello and welcome to Focus on Liberia. I am sorry. Sorry, trying to fix. Hello and welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is Roundtable Africa. I am Sekou Kele, your host, and I am pleased to bring you this edition of our broadcast. Our topic for today is Taliban victory, the African perspective. And as usual, I am with my host, Adwa Amara, all the way from Sierra Leone. Amara, welcome.
No, thank you very much. And I wish to express my thanks and appreciation to all those who have continuously been listening to our program. And I welcome everybody here to this all active discussion. I hope it's going to be interactive and very prudent for the continent of Africa. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Edward Amara. And just before we begin, today's topic is very interesting, folks. We are discussing Taliban victory, the African perspective. We all know what it is. We all know what time it is and what news it is around the world. The Taliban Islamist groups have taken over Afghanistan after 2 decades of war with the United States and the Allied forces. What does that mean for Africans? What has changed in the global discourse about war on terror? What does this mean for terrorists around Africa, and how should Africans position themselves in the new geopolitical strategies around the world? We will look into this today, but just before we begin, we would like to get our latest news from around Africa, as we always do, from Edward Amara. Ara, what's happening around the continent?
Oh, thank you very much. A lot is actually happening, and we have interesting events unfolding themselves into this beautiful continent of ours. Among the major stories, I managed to choose 5 important ones among the rest that are actually happening. In the first place, Sahel ministers meet to unveil new anti-terrorist strategy. With the G5 regions into West Africa, that is Mauritania, you talk about Niger, Chad, Burkina Faso, and Mali. They met in the capital city of Niger, that is Niamey, on how to combat the terrorism that is actually facing the 5 countries. All the aforementioned countries have actually suffered from a lot of terrorism attack in the last decade. So they have decided that they need to unite themselves and see how they can successfully combat ISIL, Boko Haram, Daesh, and other people that are invading the sub-region of Africa. And they believe that without a kind of unity in the combat of terrorism or terrorists in Africa, especially in the Sahel region, they are going to be defeated. Especially when France is about to take away her troops in the northern part of Mali. So they have decided to converge and see how they can organize themselves. Another important news, we go into West Africa also. In Nigeria, President Buhari sacked 2 ministers in a rare cabinet reshuffle. Buhari came to power in 2015. On a rare occasion, the president normally reshuffle his cabinet. However, because of certain circumstances into Nigeria and happening into his government, the president had decided to relieve the Minister of Agriculture and also the Minister of Energy and Power from their duties. He cited that the reshuffle came on a very rare occasion. However, he needed to do in it because he has observed certain weakness into the government, and for them to combat such weakness and fortify the holes, so he decided to sack those ministers. The Ministry of Agriculture will be overseen by the Minister of Environment, while the Ministry of Energy and Power we have to be overseen by the Minister of Environment, or the Minister of Housing and Country Planning, while they await the official appointment of the minister that are going to take over those respective positions. Another one, 3 beheaded in Mozambique. Mozambique is actually suffering from another terrorism attack in the northern part of the country. Yesterday, 3 people we are seen on the river floating. They were beheaded, and it is widely claimed that the jihadists that are fleeing from the attack of the Mozambicans and Rwandan forces are actually causing that particular havoc. Last week also, 3 fishermen were also beheaded, and they were also related to the killing of the jihadists. Then far into the eastern part of Africa, we go to Kenya. Kenya, the deputy minister of president of Kenya is actually being guided by 257 police officers. It has come on a background that President William Ruto, who is the current serving vice president of President Uhuru Kenyatta, has fallen out with the president or with President Uhuru Kenyatta. Normally, it is expected that 74 police officers should guide the president. These are seen as a kind of submersive move to deter the vice president from contesting election. Everybody have been seeing the kind of especially most Kenyans have observed that the relationship between Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto is no longer convivial. So on that drop, he decided to empower his police to take strict control over the BP's movement. And Uhuru Kenyatta has actually been widely noticed to be somebody who wants to back his arch rival in the upcoming election, who is Raila Odinga. Then finally, we head to Zambia. Zambia president complained that he virtually met an empty treasury. He said he inherited an empty treasury, and Zambia is also indebted up to $12 billion or 8.6 pound sterling. And he has decided that all those who looted the country's fund are going to be hunted down and tried. He claimed that people are trying to make late move with his sum of money, and the government is not going to allow that. And all those who are actually involved into corruption are going to be fetched out and prosecuted according to the law. Mr. Hikilema came into power on the backdrop of fighting corruption and also trying to wipe away the huge debt Zambia is suffering. So far, so good. These are the important news emanating from Africa.
Thank you very much, Edward Amara. And that takes us to our topic of the day, Taliban victory, the African perspective. As we all know, Taliban just took over the country, Afghanistan, in the Indian subcontinent. And after 2 decades of war with the United States, this deadly terrorist group have maintained resistance, and they eventually took over the country. What does this mean for Africans? What does it mean for African policy? What is this new geopolitics that is now taking over the world? That's what we want to look into today. So we take our first question. Who are the Taliban? You know, Adwamara, people want to know, because there's a lot on the internet, and we know this name now. Everybody knows Taliban. But who really are the Taliban? You know, where did they come from? And who were funding these guys? How did they become so powerful? How did they maintain resistance against the United States Army? And what is their ideology and philosophy? Is it the propaganda against them that we see on the internet? Is it the real face of Taliban? Or do Taliban really have their blueprint that we can look at and say, this is how they define themselves? So I will begin with you before I put in my own, before I bring in my own contribution. Who are the Taliban? People want to know. Amara.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I think the word Taliban is now a kind of frequently used word on international media, especially the BBC and other outlets of media where we generate our news. We have seen that Taliban actually is kind of group that is existing into Afghanistan. And because Afghanistan is another country where the USA, France, and Great Britain have been operating in that country for quite a long time prior to the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, when Osama bin Laden hit America on 9/11. However, the word Taliban simply means student. And when we talk about Taliban, they came into power actually in sometime in 1996, and they ruled Afghanistan for 5 good years. When Osama bin Laden orchestrated this attack on America, they went into hiding, and these people have actually been breeded into Pakistan. But they actually emanated from a Mujahideen sect, a kind of Muslim movement that was actually ruling Afghanistan prior to the invasion of US. And Afghanistan also, you know, America and Russia, by then the Soviet Union had interest into Afghanistan. And Mujahideen was the kind of leadership that was leading that particular group. But when Russia fell out with them, so they decided to fight assiduously against Russia with the support of America. When they gained control over it, we saw a subset of those emanating from the Mujahideen Brotherhood. They went and formed themselves into warlords. But most of them have been living in Pakistan. They were students serving there as refugees, and with Mujahideen Brotherhood with Muslim sect movement to take total control over Afghanistan. And these Taliban now who radicalized themselves into Pakistan, they decided to invade the country because they realized that Afghanistan was under a kind of situation. It was politically volatile, a repressive kind of government system. The rights of individuals were being abused. Corruption was on its peak. So they decided to offer certain things like coming to liberate, they serve as liberators, just like freedom fighters. They came into the country. And when they came with kind of subversive and criminal move, but they pretended as if they are they are angel coming to liberate the Afghanistan, the Afghan people. They use the local chiefs and other people, and they managed to take over the control of Afghanistan, especially Kabul, but they feel actually to take over the northern part of the country. However, America and other powers, with the exception of Pakistan and 3 other neighbors who actually popularly acknowledge them, that they are the leadership of Afghanistan. The rest fail to acknowledge them. And because of the local leaders that they use and the promise to end corruption, to end the repressive government that they met over there, to give women their right, freedom, and whatsoever thing. So they try to maneuver themselves into those people, and either they will enroll you into the army by force or through by persuasion. 1 year later, they instituted everything, and most of what they have today comes with certain qualifiers. So in short, these are the Taliban that we are talking about. They are student radical set, and today they are over again. After 20 years in the recession, they are back. They have resuscitated themselves just after the departure of the American troops.
Thank you very much, Edward Amara. Indeed, that's a very good intro there about the group called Taliban. You know, I did some research to get some information about this group called Taliban. And like you rightly said, it means student. It's a Pashto word. It's also that word you can find it in Arabic. Taliban, Talib, you have the word Taliban from the word student. But are they really students? Well, we'll find out. It's an extremist group. That we have to be clear about that. It's an Islamist group, and they are very extremist. And they came out of a group called Mujahideen. And to give you a clear perspective, we have to go to 1979 to stroke 1980, when the Soviet Union was in charge of that region. So what happened is that in this country called Afghanistan, we share border with Iran, shares border with Pakistan, it shares border with Uzbekistan. It's a predominantly Muslim country, but highly tribalized society. They have a lot of tribes, just like the way we have in Africa. So the tribal groups, there's a lot of tribalism going on within the country itself. Then in 1979, they had this communist regime that took over, okay? This communist regime that took over the country. So the communist regime took over the country, and they were doing the bid of the Soviet Union. They were carrying out a lot of cracking down on opposition. They were carrying out a lot of socialist and the communist activities in the country. So the Muslims decided to resist. A little Muslim group called Mujahideen decided to resist the Soviet rule or the communist government. So America, the United States at that time, was fighting. Their geopolitics and strategy was to dismantle the Soviet Union, to destroy the Soviet Union, to stop the expansion of the Soviet ideology in the Southeast Asia and around the world. So they decided to support the Islamist group called the Mujahideen. So the CIA, the United States, decided to give ammunition, even Britain, to train the Mujahideen. So the Mujahideen were trained to overthrow the Soviet Union. And they eventually succeeded, I think, in 1989, in pushing out the Soviet Union. So when they pushed out the Soviet Union, they succeeded. Then there was a faction among them. They started fighting among themselves, because America and Britain now say, okay, put down your arms and go for democracy. And they said, no, we want to institute Sharia. So they had a breakout. There was a group called the Northern Alliance that wanted to actually follow through with democracy. And there was this extremist group that came out of them called the Taliban. They wanted a strictly Islamic Sharia law. So this is how the Taliban came to be. It mutated out of a group called Mujahideen that were originally trained by America to defeat the Soviet Union. So in one way, we would say this is America's own creation. The Taliban is American creation. It is their own evil they created that came against them. So what is the ideology of the Taliban? The Taliban do not believe in democracy. They do not believe in the power of the people. The doctrine of democracy that says power is inherent in the people. The people they have the power, and they delegate this power to certain individuals to rule. Taliban do not believe in that philosophy. They believe that the people do not have any power. Power belongs to God. And this God is the God of Islam, Allah. And the people should be ruled by divine law. And the divine law is called Sharia, and it should come out of the Quran. So the rights of other minority groups, the rights of other people, remember the country is highly tribalized, and there are people who are not Muslims in Afghanistan. You have few Christian, you have few Zoroastrian, you have people who do not even follow any religion. But Taliban do not recognize the existence of these minority groups. They want strictly Sharia law. Under a Taliban regime, a woman is not supposed to go to school. Under a Taliban regime, a female is supposed to be a producer of babies, just to be in the house. Okay? Under a Taliban regime, women are not supposed to speak. They are not supposed to even show their face in public. They are supposed to dress up like masquerade and then walk around the street. And then they are not allowed to travel without a male escort or security with them. So this is the kind of extreme ideology that these people brought in. And America saw that they created this evil. In fact, this famous Osama bin Laden was a member of the Mujahideen, where the Taliban came from. And these were all American allies, okay? They were all American allies, including Osama himself. But when they fell out, because they wanted to continue the extremist view, and then they went against American foreign policy and American democracy. This is how they became enemies, but they were at one time friends. You see, this is what we have to know about the Taliban. So the Taliban in 2001, we all know when September 11 happened, the United States invaded Afghanistan and toppled the regime. So when they toppled the Taliban regime, they replaced them with a puppet government, and the puppet government was not able to resist the Taliban, who maintained resistance for 2 decades. So the Taliban, in a nutshell, is an extreme Islamist group in Afghanistan, made of 3 major tribes in the country, and they want strictly Sharia law that is not that we will consider a Stone Age law in these days, that does not regard the rights of women, that does not regard the rights of minority, and that is based on strictly Islamic rule. So I think that's what the Taliban is all about, and I don't think we are misrepresenting them. This is what they did when they took power in the 90s, and this is how they've been ruling. My friend Edward Amara just dropped there. So that's take us to the second question. After we know who the Taliban are, how did Kabul, the capital city of Afghanistan, fall to the Taliban after 2 decades of war? Sorry, we have a little glitch there. Yeah, Amara, welcome back. So we are dealing with the second question here. How did Kabul, the capital city of Afghanistan, fall to Taliban after 2 decades of war? We know America went there under the pretext of war against terror. They are former friends. They are Mujahideen, and the Taliban turned against them, and they began to harbor terrorists like Osama, who allegedly bombed the World Trade Center in September 11, 2001. So they went in there 2001 and they left in 2021. That's almost 20 years of war. How did the Taliban maintain resistance? Financially, how did they get the ammunition? How did they get even the influence, the support to be able to resist the great United States Army for 2 decades? That's what people want to know.
Oh, thank you very much. I think this is a kind of a mysterious organization, radical, and we must understand that they also have backing from neighbors like Pakistan. But the Taliban were in power for 5 good years in Afghanistan. That was 1996 to 2001, prior to the havoc caused by Osama bin Laden that enabled the American government to use a kind of justification in bombarding part of Afghanistan and driving away the Taliban regime. They somersaulted and all of them went into hiding. And most of them, or the group actually was popularly hosted by the Pakistan government. When you watch at it, how did they take over totally so? You know, we must understand that the fall of the Taliban came on the backdrop of America involving themselves into the conflict of Afghanistan, because the Taliban had harbored a man like Osama bin Laden, and Osama bin Laden is the founder of Al Qaeda, and he used his his connection to the Taliban connection to destroy America. And when the World Trade Center was destroyed in 2001, it was believed that the Taliban regime, a radical set that shouldn't be encouraged. And if America is to succeed fighting against terrorism, then radical set of brotherhood who are actually leading Afghanistan should definitely be eliminated from the surface of the earth. So we saw what happened in 2001 when George W. Bush was in power. He enabled his army to ensure that they flushed away the Taliban. The Taliban actually went into hiding. But their failure came majorly because of the support of America. However, Kabul and the other islands within Afghanistan, we are definitely not safe, because on numerous occasions we saw, we had, and we witnessed what the Taliban did. They can even come and destroy the parliament into Afghanistan, into Kabul. They eliminated a lot of people, even caused a lot of destruction on the American. I mean, over 2,000 Americans, soldiers lost their life over there. So their failure came on the backdrop of America's involvement into the conflict, or trying to outstate their government in 2011, 20 years ago. So all of their failure is centered around that, and they were actually hidden into Pakistan, and Pakistan supported them. And it is even somehow very clear to see when they overran the country 10 days ago. Every other countries we are pulling out their ambassadors, urging for their citizens to leave. But we saw, we heard, and we listened to what Russia said, that they are going first to observe the Taliban, and they wouldn't want to use a blanket statement to judge most of their behavior till they observe the Taliban, they know what they have come to do, and if ever they are not going to be a type of radical set that they used to be, that enable the American government to flush them out.
Right. So definitely Kabul, there are many theories out there, Edward, that why Kabul fell to these terrorists after 2 decades of war. One, like you mentioned, the geographical location of Afghanistan. The fact that they are surrounded by Islamic countries like Iran, like Pakistan, like Uzbekistan. So you can see a lot of hiding breeding grounds over there. So you can run, to Pakistan and then regroup and come back. You can get support from Iran. You can get some. So they are surrounded. The territory itself is very favorable for them to hide. And I heard also that it's a mountainous country where it's difficult for you for air power to really function, because they can hide in those caves and you can keep bombing them. You can't really do anything. You can do a very good damage to their troops. So that's one factor. The second factor is the financial aspect. Where were these guys getting money? Because we know if you are against the United States, you are against Europe, then you will be in financial problem, because they run most of the powerful financial institutions around the world. So how did this group manage to amass wealth for themselves to buy this ammunition when they are fighting against the Western world? Where were they getting the money? We hear the media say, well, these guys were selling opiums, they were selling drugs and what have you. It really amazed me how these guys were able to make millions and billions of dollars and buy weapons made by Europe. Okay? Remember, this country do not manufacture weapons. So where were they getting this ammunition? Who were manufacturing their weapons? Where were they getting the supply? So sometimes when I look at this war, I have a lot of questions than answer, because I'm wondering, you are fighting war against the United States. There's armed embargo. Financial institutions are closed. You cannot access them. How do you make billions of dollars? How do you buy ammunition, traffic them, and then maintain war against this superpower for decades? It really amazed me, and I don't think I have an answer for that. And that remains really a very powerful network that these guys must have organized to be able to maintain this resistance. You want to say something?
Don't forget that the Taliban also, we are seeing solution to Pakistan. I mean, to Afghanistan. Prior to this time, when the Mujahideen brother who was actually in power, the Taliban we have built as a solution because they were very corrupt, repressive, they cracked down on everybody. So when they came in, these guys, they are radical, that is one. At the same time, they believe in persuasion. That probably could be one. Because when you watch at it, the fall of Kabul within 10 days show some signal. Because one, drones were over Afghanistan. You have seen on numerous occasions, Afghanistan was a kind of politically volatile area. The government itself, can the government claim that it is going to fight against corruption? When the country was plugged into corruption, we saw a lot of other things was happening. So the Taliban view themselves as saviors towards power. That is why you must understand that most of in fact, they never fought physical war with the Afghan government troop. Rather, most of them we are surrendering on moral background. So there is a possibility that why even the Americans were on the soil of Afghanistan, these people had mutual agreement with most of those local forces. So a lot have to be revealed when they are going to set up their government in 2 days' time, and they have definitely promised to not to include any former government officer into their own government. Women are going to be allowed, but they are going to be given lower ranks.
Yeah.
That is one. Yeah. So all of these things are very controversial. I believe.
I very much agree with you. But the first thing here I'm also looking at is the infiltration. They infiltrated the Afghan army, the national army. So why Americans were thinking that they were training Afghanistan army personnel, they were actually training Taliban people. Because these Taliban guys can leave the bush and come down and pretend to be civilians, and then they get trained by American forces. Then at the end of the day, they go against the Americans. So I think that was what was happening. Then there was a lot of sympathizers, terrorist sympathizers in the country, because the Taliban presented themselves as these morally upright guys, incorruptible, straightforward, religious, righteous people. So the people were fed up with the puppet government, which they assumed to be corrupt. And definitely they were corrupt. And there were a lot of poverty, corruption, unemployment going on. So they see the Afghani government as sellouts, as people who have sold out to the United States and the war, and they are not willing to actually change the condition of the people. So the Taliban were seen as saviors by some silent majority. So that's what I'm seeing here. So these sympathizers were also acting as spies and giving intelligence to the Taliban. So it's difficult to defeat terrorists anywhere in the world with arms. That's what I'm seeing here. Because within the country, they have sympathizers. Within the army, we can see the same thing about Nigeria. Why is it so difficult for Nigerian government to crush Boko Haram? Because you have sympathizers of Boko Haram in the government. You have people, high-ranking military officers, who actually appreciate what Boko Haram is doing, but they can't say it publicly. You have people in the government, ministers, who are sympathizers, maybe for religious reasons, for moral reasons, for so many wrong reasons. They are sympathizers of the terrorist group. So like that, you cannot defeat such group because the civilians that you are protecting are actually members. This is what is happening. That's why you can't defeat Boko Haram in Nigeria as well. Because in fact, recently, I would digress a little bit, in Nigeria, they went to the Nigerian Defense Academy, the headquarters of the Nigerian Defense Academy. Terrorists went there and kidnapped army officers. Okay? If terrorists can go into your defense academy and then kidnap high-ranking army officers, it means you are done. It means they get intelligence. They mean they have people. So I think that's what the Taliban also used the same thing. They were preaching and they were presenting themselves as the moral guys, the upright guys, and the righteous guys. So there were a lot of sympathizers around in the country. So it's difficult. It was very, very difficult for America to destroy this kind of group. So we talk about corruption as well. The army, the national army was corrupt. The president was corrupt. The system was corrupt. So it was easy for them to pull out. 10 days. After 20 years of training, within 10 days, some guy with AK-47 ran down the whole country. That says a lot about the system that was controlling that country and how corrupt they were. We will take a short break, my friend, and we will come back. And when we come back, we have two more important things to discuss: how this relates to Africa and what should African leaders see and do now that the war on terror has taken a new dimension. And this victory of Taliban, what kind of signal does it send to terrorists around the world and in Africa? We will discuss that when we come back. So please stay with us. Sorry, we have a little technical problem here. Experts are not here today to help us.
We all are be right.
Welcome back. You are watching Focus on Liberia. This is Roundtable Africa. I am Sekou Kele, your host. And as always, with my co-host, Edward Amara, all the way from Sierra Leone, we are discussing the topic, Taliban victory, the African perspective. The next question here is, should African leaders continue to trust with their Western allies after Kabul? Amara, this question is very important because we saw the American government going into Afghanistan with a lot of allies from around Europe and around the world, and including allies on the ground that supported their effort to topple the Taliban. They went in there, they established a puppet government. I will use the word puppet government, and they established a democratic system. Elections were going on. They swore to defend the Afghan people. They said they will defend the women's right. They said they will not allow these terrorists to rule. If you listen to George Bush, he said, no longer will we allow terrorist group to rule Afghanistan. That Afghanistan has come to democratic rule, and democracy has come to stay forever. But 2011, here we are, Americans have been taking over the roof of the embassy. They've been airlifted. They left the country, and the president that they installed was not protected. The government toppled, and Americans said they were protecting their interests. They said they have spent a lot of money. They said their time is up, and they've stayed there too long, and they wanted to leave. And so, in fact, some reports said when they were leaving, the first time they started the withdrawal, they did not even inform the Afghan government that they were withdrawing. Overnight, the people just saw the American army just left, and the terrorist group started taking over the country. Now, for African leaders or African government who believe in the United States, who believe in European protection, like in Mali right now, we have France is presenting itself as the savior of the people of Mali against the terrorist group. We have Nigeria now trying to call America to come and build the AFRICOM in Nigeria in order to fight against Boko Haram. Now that we know that when the Western interest is threatened, they are likely to take decisions that favor themselves. Should Africans continue to trust Western leaders, Western foreign policies, and knowing fully well that these people only protect their interests, And once anything goes against their interest, they do not mind sacrificing an entire nation. They will definitely turn their back. What do you think about this?
Oh, thank you very much. I think, as we always see, history is not just a matter of reading about past events, but using a lens to analyze those things, see their implications or impact in the past, and you also use it to judge the present. We all must understand that the like of the Western world or America and her allies do not always involve into conflict without having their own better facts into it. We have seen this on numerous occasions. When they involve, they are manipulators. They are very good at pretending as if they are going to handle the situation. But quarter of a century ago, America declared war on terrorism. I think if Osama bin Laden would have been allowed today, he would have been celebrating his victory because he may be dead. Most of his corporates are now in jail. Some we are held for quite a long time in the like of Guantanamo Bay, and some are still in prison in America, Great Britain, and others. But yet, the movement is going on. And when you watch at it, can we continue trusting the West? No. We must understand that terrorism or conflict into the world actually emanate on certain issues. It could be like based on corruption, repressive governments, and whatsoever. Now we have a radicalized set of people who are actually trying to portray their mentality, who do not believe in gradualism, they believe in vendetta. So if they believe in trying to come with a vendetta or using any means of violence, first what we need to do, we shouldn't trust arms against arms to solve problems. Because you are fighting terrorists who are radicalized citizens of that particular country. They know the country as well as you know it. And these people know the causes and solution towards their own problem. I think it is high time Africans wake up from their slumber and understand that we cannot keep on trusting the West. We have seen what is happening today in Afghanistan. America, Great Britain, France have evacuated their citizens and they also have left the country. We have seen what is happening into Mali. France is threatening to take away her troops. And we are seeing most of like the conflict in Sierra Leone has been solved. The Great Britain and others have left. Other countries into West Africa where they had all of this problem, we are seeing in South Sudan where you have foreign troops that are even greater than the number of the South Sudanese army. So we cannot keep trusting these people. We have seen what was happening into Kabul. And in Kabul, you must understand that, as you rightly stated, most of those people that we are receiving training under the Americans, we are Talibans. If it were not so, they wouldn't have had the gut to be even attacking Kabul. Why the Americans and others were there? We are killing government ministers, destroying government parastatals, and even holding other people at a state of ransom. So these people we cannot keep on trusting the Americans or the West in the name of fighting terrorism. Like the case into Nigeria, it could be taken like a very perfect case of study, because since in the early 2000s, Nigeria has started getting her own problems. See, when Good Lord Jonathan came in, Omar Yar'Adua, after he came in, when he lost power to when Good Lord Jonathan took over, just after when Omar Yar'Adua died, Boko Haram came into a kind of heightened effect. Now, since then, Nigeria has not been able to handle Boko Haram, and they have used the same repressive system, taking arms and ammunition against the terrorists. Unfortunately, they haven't succeeded. So they are citizens, they are part and parcel of those things. I think we need to have an African perspective of handling our own issue instead of relying on the West, taking it because they actually come with the notion that they cannot negotiate with terrorists. That is very good. They are radicalized group, but our fighting against them has taken us to nowhere, or it is not taking us anywhere. So if fighting against the terrorist group is taking us nowhere, then why not call them to negotiation board? Try to do what? So now see what is happening today in Afghanistan. These people are radicals. Now, America is claiming that if the Taliban can be used to fight against terrorism, then they have no option. Why have they been fighting the Taliban over 20 years if they know that these people can easily be used to fight against terrorism? Because they are saying the ISK group was the one that attacked the airport. They are not part of them. So, in other words, America is trying to term the ISK group as a more radical, more terrorist group compared to Taliban, who have been notorious in destroying people. So I think Africa need to come to a drawing board and forget about taking arms and ammunition against the terrorist group. Since they are our brothers, we know ourselves, we know why they cause this, they are fighting for. Why not try to solve those solutions? Because it is out of corruption, bad governance, repressive system, or lack of good governance system is a result of all of these things, and even failure of our African government to leave power. And you take a war would have still been between between Nigeria and Cameroon in the name of the Bakassi Peninsula, because of Bakassi Peninsula originally belonged to Cameroon, but because of the settlement and those that are actually within the Bakassi Peninsula regard themselves as Nigerians. So that was why. But they used the International Criminal Court and they implement the African justice way of solving that problem. I think we need to watch at it with different lens and forget about the radical way of solving issues. Because America has said, with all her military weapons, with all her allies, with all the sophisticated thing they haven't been able to defeat terrorists within themselves. And we have seen that how a lot of Americans, because of terrorism, they have been radicalized today. America is one of the few societies where individuals will just take an arm and ammunition to go and destroy one whole school and claim that that person is mentally deranged or whatsoever thing. So it is really not solving issue. Let's try to bastardize the American mentality or the Western way of fighting this terrorism and come to a negotiation board. It is high time we regard them as people that we can negotiate with.
Thank you very much. And well, Amara, I think I agree with you there that our African leaders, it's time for self-determination. Self-determination is the word. We can no longer entrust our security in the hands of people who are protecting their own interests. It's very risky. In fact, Marcus Garvey said any race that depend on another race for its own protection is a race that is willing to enslave you. Any leadership that is willing to give its security and everything to another group of people, it is a leadership that is willing to enslave you. We cannot sit now in Africa and think that the United States is going to protect us. France will protect us. Britain will protect us. Guess what? They protect their interests. The terrorists that are attacking Mali, Nigeria, should be the concern of every African country. African allied forces should put hands together and put an end to the terrorist group in Nigeria, in Mozambique, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Chad. Because if you allow these terrorists in these particular countries to prosper, all other African countries, they will come after you one after the other. And the America that you depend on, when they come in, guess what? They come in with sticky fingers. They are not coming there to help you. In fact, we learned of the case where the French were negotiating with the Malian terrorists, while the Malian army was in the dark. Whenever the French forces are in any place, the terrorists do not attack. But as soon as the French forces leave, the terrorists will attack. There is a coordination between the French and the terrorists in Mali, allegedly, so that they can maintain presence. Because the old divide and conquer, divide and rule strategy of the European has not changed. But Africans think we forget history so quickly. We think that the United States will come into Africa and help us and build AFRICOM and fight terrorists and defend us. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's even unnatural for it to happen because they are protecting their interests. So if the army terrorist group is going to save their interest, they will arm terrorist group. If supporting Boko Haram will protect American interests, they will support Boko Haram. If supporting the terrorist group to take over West Africa will help the American geopolitics and strategy against Pan-Africanism, they will definitely do that. So don't sit in your corner and think that these people are going to help you. African leaders need to rethink their position in the global politics. Americans will always take their plane and evacuate their citizens when there is a threat. They don't care about you. And they are not doing anything wrong. It's not their responsibility to take care of you. It's not their responsibility at all. So we owe our people the responsibility to take care of them, to protect them, provide security. African country, what's the essence of ECOWAS? What's the essence of African Union? All the regional bodies that we cannot provide a security architecture that will protect the continent and the subcontinent. We keep waiting for people. I heard somebody say we should pray so that the AFRICOM will come to our country in Liberia, then we will be protected. Like, seriously? We have to do something. The geopolitics of the world has shifted. The victory of Taliban sent a signal to all the terrorist groups around, especially in Africa, that if you hold on enough, you will win. If you hold on enough, you will win. Because once Americans spend money and they don't get what they want, they will leave. That's the message that Afghanistan has sent to terrorist groups. So get ready. Boko Haram will be intensified. All the terrorist groups will intensify. And this is not hate speech against anybody in any faith. This is the reality that we are living in. That a group of bandits in the name of an ideology can overrun an entire nation and enslave a people. This is crazy. And if we don't de-radicalize our people, we are going to find ourselves in this mess very soon. And war on terror, like my friend Amara said, it's not always picking up arms and grenades. We have to take it on the educational front. We have to take it into the religious cycle and de-radicalize the messages. It has to go to the politics and the economic of the country. Because the more poor people you have, the more people that will be recruited into terrorist organizations because they are jobless. So all the young people that you have on the street that are jobless, they are candidate potential criminals and candidate for terrorist recruitment. So that's the danger. So Africans should rethink the way they run things. Otherwise, that continent will be the breeding ground for a very, very dangerous terrorist groups that are yet to be created. So that takes us to the last question here, Amara. What should be the new Pan-African strategy against wars on terror? Like I said right now, for me, I think education. The subject of terrorism must now become an important topic in our educational system. The school curriculum has to take it because it's time to look deep into it because it's a mindset thing. Because most of these people that have been recruited into terrorism were not terrorists in the beginning. They were peaceful Muslims living among people, doing their daily job. They love you as you love them. They carry out their daily activity. Most Muslims don't want to be terrorists. They want to live like anyone else. They want to live in a free society. You can see what happened in Afghanistan. The people are fleeing the country. Why? Because no people want to live on a Stone Age law. Okay? But when you have wrong education, you have poverty, you have all these things happening, then the terrorist group can come and start recruiting young people. That's what is happening in Nigeria. In the northern part of Nigeria is the poorest part of the country. Poverty in the northern part of Nigeria is crazy. The unemployment there, the illiteracy rate is so high. So the Boko Haram can easily recruit these young people that are jobless. That's what is happening in Mali. So these are things that we will look into. Poverty is a breeding ground for terrorism, miseducation, de-radicalization. Even the messages that are being preached in religious cycle must now be looked at. What are they preaching? Because if we don't do it, we will be consumed and we will destroy ourselves. Because when terrorist group come, guess what? They do not attack only non-Muslim, they also attack Muslims themselves. Okay? The first victim of terrorists are Muslims themselves. In the northern part of Nigeria, the first victims of terrorists are Muslims. So it is not about non-Muslim or Muslims. We are all into this together. So it's trying to de-radicalize, not just taking grenades and arms and give them, but the educational system has to find ways to de-radicalize these people. There has to be ways also our politics and our strategy have to reflect. And the security of the continent, the security architecture is not to improve the technology of our army and not sit down and waiting for America to defend us. It will never happen. So back to you, Amara.
No, thank you. As we are running out of time, as you rightly said, education is a perfect one. However, we must understand that terrorist groups are using education as a yardstick to wage war against their own people or on their own people. We have seen what the Muslim, like the Taliban, they are known as students, and they are born. In fact, they are not part of the original Mujahideen group that grew up. Rather, they were like students or that we are or were extracted after the Mujahid group, or but they were based in Pakistan attending school. And when they were taught there, they became radicalized. So when we're talking about education, but what type of education? When we want to educate our pupils, they should be carefully and adequately educated on how to take up good moral standards and how to protect the country, how they should create that kind of patriotic mentality into them. We need to have, so education should be fine. We should also involve in things like in our education, we should also include something like our civic responsibility. Because I have seen this on numerous occasions, even in Sierra Leone, I have seen, or I have noticed, or the government has already decided to involve civic education into our education system. That is where you teach your child your rights and your responsibilities, your rights as an individual and the responsibility that you own to the state. That is another one. At the end of the day, Africa, we believe in democracy. That is fantastic. Granted, democracy is almost found in every African society, but there is no good governance. I think when terrorists go come with certain message, because we are very poor, the three greatest enemies of mankind are poverty, illiteracy, and ignorance. And watching to African society, they are definitely breeding there. So it is high time our African leaders dissuade themselves from the attitude of corruption and involve governance, equity of development. At the same time, we should be accountable, responsible, and we should have a responsive, reactive, and responsible government. We try to do away with these things because terrorist groups actually use the shortcoming of the society, capitalize on them, and they will find people who are already suffering from poverty, ignorance, who are illiterate, who may not even think beyond their nose. They can easily use them to do all of these things because that is what exactly they have their market, and the market are the illiterate. The market, their market, the customers are the illiterate. The customers are those who are ignorant. Their customers are those who are very poor, the vulnerable. And if somebody is very vulnerable, poor, that person hasn't anything, you just come and radicalize that person, give him ammunition, and he can use those things to get himself enriched. He can become anything. That is what we need to think about, and we should forgo everything that has to do with corrupting the society, setting, because when you corrupt the society, you are not making any development for yourself into the future. Because they said you cannot be successful until your successor succeeds. Because you may be so strong enough to handle the current situation, but you may not remain in power forever. Another man may take over who may not successfully handle that situation. You have other crops breeding up that can easily take over. And we should never and ever trust the West in handling our own political affairs in terms of security or whatsoever. Because one day they may leave. They have left Afghanistan. They are on the verge of leaving they are on the verge of leaving Mali. They left Sierra Leone once after they settled everything. Sierra Leoneans accepted it. They left Liberia once. The left Ivory Coast one. French forces are no longer there. If they want, let them go at war. We have seen so all of these things. And the G5s ahead at this meeting into Niger, Mali. I think Africans should observe that. Let us have regional, constructive, and genuine geopolitics that will benefit the region.
Thank you very much, Edward Amara. I agree with you there. The whole thing we're discussing here is all about geopolitics and geostrategy. Okay, the geopolitics and geostrategy of the United States and the Western world towards Africa since the 1900s, we know, was about destroying Pan-Africanism. Their desire and their plan has been to make sure that Pan-Africanism does not become the new way of African vision or in visualizing the world or developing their countries. They wanted that ideology and that philosophy obliterated completely. That's why Patrice Lumumba died. That's why Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown. That's why Thomas Sankara died. That's why Amilcar Cabral was taken out. That's why Toure was oppressed. That's why all these great leaders that were bringing out the African ideology to develop the continent from the very beginning, they made sure they created rebel group, puppet group. They created some I would even call radical terrorist group to remove these leaders from power. What they gave us today is an Africa with a bulldog that has no teeth to bite. They gave us weak leaders. They gave us leaders that make music, leaders that move around, walk on red carpet, leaders with pot bellies, leaders with no history, leaders with no ideological training, leaders with little education. They have given us foolish leaders now that are ruling, that are governing the continent, that have no consciousness, that have no understanding of how the world works. So now we are in this mess. What the terrorism that is now coming to take over the world, these leaders are not even aware. They relax. They are not aware that Africa is under siege. They are not aware that Africa is under threat by global terrorism. They are not even afraid because their children live abroad. So it is time for Pan-Africanists to take a new step. The Pan-African Resistance Army, we need to start thinking of that, because this continent, whether we like it or not, will be the next battleground for the superpowers. Terrorists are going to find sympathizers in Africa. Russians will find sympathizers in Africa. Chinese will find sympathizers in Africa. The United States will have sympathizers in Africa. Africa will be an Armageddon, a battleground for these ideologies. If a Pan-Africanists do not surface to recapture this continent and protect it from all the radical ideologies that are about to come up, we are going to be the sorrow of humanity, like I always say. Right now, the great Nigeria, the so-called giant of Africa, is falling. If you are not following the news, Nigeria is gone as we speak. The country is in the hand of bandits. The president is not aware of the security architecture of the country. Everything has been eroded. Nigeria you used to know doesn't exist anymore. So this is the problem that we are facing. And Pan-Africanism has to come up. It's the only way to de-radicalize our youth. It's the only way to produce new breed of leaders that understand the continent and keep the best interest of the continent. Only Pan-Africanist ideology can do that. And a Pan-African resistance army has to be created in all African countries to protect this continent from terrorism and from European hypocrisy. Otherwise, we are not going anywhere, my people. Because when the geopolitics and geostrategy is not properly arranged, you cannot participate in global politics, because everything America is doing is based on already arranged plans that they have for hundreds of years. They are not just acting emotional. They are not emotional people. These are people that move with strategy and plan. We do not have these things. When we have this other leader today, he moved by emotions. Once they take him to Brussels, they give him a big dinner, they gave him paper to sign, he just signed. So these are the kind of leaders we have. So it's time for Pan-Africanists to stand up, to modernize, or to push the modernization of our army in order to protect our continent. Terrorism is a real threat. It's a threat against everybody. And if we do not strengthen our military architecture, we do not strengthen our educational system, and we do not deal with poverty, illiteracy, and ignorance, like my friend said, then our children are likely to be recruited by terrorists, and we will lose that continent, and we will all run abroad looking for safe havens to hide ourselves. So may that not happen to Africa. May we find a solution to put that continent together under the banner of Pan-Africanism. May that happen again. The spirit of Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, all the great leaders, may we revive their ideology, their philosophy, so we protect our continent and provide that African unity that we always wanted. So with that, Amara, you can give your closing statement and we'll say goodbye for the day.
Oh, thank you very much. I think it is high time African leaders reconstruct their way of thinking and follow the step that they have just started, the G5 by meeting with the like of Mauritania, Chad,
the so-called G5 in Berlin. Sorry for cutting you off. How can you have a so-called African G5 meeting in Berlin, the same Berlin where 1885 happened, where Africa was divided? The irony is just terrible.
No, they are having it in Niger.
In Niger now? Which one did they have in Germany recently?
It's just like the same thing, just like security reason, trying how to strategize and solve the problem of the Sahel region. it was the same thing. So I think they need to
reconstruct.
reconstruct.
Really serious, Amara? Are these guys really serious? I doubt it.
So they should reconstruct themselves, focus, and try to form a kind of policy that is workable. And above all, my last statement is that they should stop the American mentality of saying they cannot negotiate with these guys, because they are our brothers. They know why they became radicalized. They can de-radicalize themselves through negotiation. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you very much, Amara. De-radicalization is the word, and we must stand against terrorism, no matter your religion, your political philosophy. When tyranny is tyranny, oppression is oppression. A society where women can go to school, a society where people are not free. Because the world we live in today, we have to understand that people have different religious views, different philosophy, different understanding. So there is no way you are going to bring any divine law to impose it on a state, a democratic state, where people have different views. It's not going to happen. What's going to happen there is going to be oppression. People will be oppressed. And this is not what we want for our African society. We want everybody to be free to express themselves. Whatever religion you want to be non-believer is your business. You want to be believer is your business. That's why a constitution, created by the people is what should govern a nation, not a divine law or self-imposed divine law. These are things that will never work. They can work in certain countries, but we do not want it in Africa, because we are kind of a multi-ethnic and diverse group of society. We have different religion and different ethnic group and tongue. We cannot allow such an ideology to prosper in our society. It will create a lot of chaos. It will create a lot of killing. It will create a lot of oppression, and we do not want that. So the fall of the victory of Taliban in Afghanistan sent a bad signal to terrorists in Africa, and African government must be aware, and they must rise up to the occasion to defend their people. So thank you very much. We will see you again next week, always here on Focus on Liberia. Thank you.
We are Liberian. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Our